is Rachel. I am not someone who panics easily. I work in healthcare administration. I deal with difficult situations, difficult information, difficult phone calls on a regular basis. I am generally the person in a room who stays calm when other people don't. I was not calm on the fourth day. We had adopted a puppy 3 days earlier. My daughter was 5 years old, and she was standing right next to me when I picked him up. I still hear the sound he made. Some context. My husband and I had been talking about getting a dog for over a year before we actually did it. We made the decision to adopt rather than buy. Found a local rescue agency that presented itself well. Application process, follow-up calls, the full presentation of an organization that cared about where its animals went. We went through every step. We got approved. We brought home a puppy in late October, a young male, healthy-looking, energetic in the specific, chaotic way of young puppies. Those first 3 days were everything you hope for when you bring a new animal into a house with a small child. He was underfoot constantly. My daughter carried him from room to room. He slept in a pile at the foot of the couch and woke up running. We took photos every hour because that is what you do with a new puppy and a 5-year-old who cannot stop smiling. On the morning of the fourth day, I came downstairs and he was lying on the kitchen floor. Not sleeping, just lying there. I crouched down next to him. He did not respond the way he had responded every other morning. No scramble to get up, no tail, no immediate attempt to follow me toward the kitchen counter. Ears down, eyes dull. He looked at me, and that was all. I told myself he was tired. Puppies have hard bursts of energy, and then they crash completely. That is a documented, normal thing that happens. I had read enough about puppies in the weeks leading up to this that I knew not to panic over a dog that was resting. I stood up and went about the morning and told myself he would be fine by the time my daughter came downstairs. He did not move. An hour passed, then another. My daughter had been up for a while and I'd kept her away from him with some excuse I don't remember now. Something in the back of my head had been getting louder for 2 hours, and I had been managing it the way you manage something you do not want to be true. At around 9:15, I decided I needed to pick him up. I almost did not. I remember standing on the other side of the kitchen, looking at him lying on the floor and having a specific thought, that if I went over there and picked him up and he was fine, I would feel ridiculous for how worried I had let myself get. That thought held me across the room for a moment. I almost turned around. I went over. I crouched down. I got my hands under him. I lifted him. He made a sound, not a bark, not a whimper. One sound, sharp, like something being torn. Then he went limp. He was not breathing. My daughter was standing 2 feet behind me. I do not remember the drive to the vet with any clarity. I remember her face. I remember the sound of my own voice trying to stay level while I drove. The clinic was 4 minutes from our house. I carried him in, and the staff came to me before I reached the desk. He had died on the way there. The vet confirmed it within 2 minutes. The cause was canine parvovirus, parvo, a disease that is highly contagious, that moves fast in young animals, and that is completely detectable with a standard test before placement. He had been carrying it before he showed a single visible symptom. He was sick the day we brought him home. He was sick all 3 of those days. The vet told me that an animal can appear completely healthy on Monday and be in serious decline by Thursday. He had been sick the whole time. I called the agency from the vet's parking lot. I told them what had happened. I asked directly whether the puppy had been tested before placement. The response was not what I expected. Not urgency, not grief, not an apology. Irritation. The person I spoke to seemed annoyed that I was calling, annoyed by the situation in a way that suggested I was the problem in this scenario, that the death of the animal they had placed with my family in front of my 5-year-old was an inconvenience I was creating for them by reporting it. They told me to bring him back for confirmation. I did. They confirmed Parvo. Then they told me he was from a litter. Several puppies placed with several families around the same time. They began checking. Almost every animal from that litter was sick. Multiple families were dealing with what my family had dealt with. Vet bills, sick animals, in some cases the same outcome. The agency is still operating. I looked them up 6 months after this happened. They are still placing animals, still running the same application process, the same follow-up calls, the same presentation of an organization that cares where its animals go. I found out in the weeks after the confirmation that parvo testing costs approximately $22 per animal. $22 per puppy. Before placement, they did not do it. My neighbor adopted from the same litter at the same time. Her dog survived. One animal out of that entire group. She still has him. I see him sometimes when I walk past her house. I have thought about that yell every day since October. He was already sick when we brought him home. He was sick every single one of those 3 days, and the people who were supposed to test him, who had one job, which was a $22 test, did not do it, and then were irritated when I called. The agency is still operating. That one is about a system that failed before anyone ever had a chance. This next one happened at 12:40 on a Tuesday afternoon, on a residential street in broad daylight. And the person responsible never said a single word about it. My name is Jamie. I was 13 years old and I was not a dramatic kid. I grew up on a quiet residential street where the most significant thing that usually happened on a Tuesday was what was on television. At 12:40 on a Tuesday in June, I heard a sound from the front yard. I have never been able to unhear it. And what I cannot forgive is what my father did when he came outside. Some context. My father had a dog, a large mixed breed, the kind of dog that required real management and consistent boundaries. My father was not especially good at providing either of those things. The dog was known in the neighborhood, not well liked, not the kind of animal that made people feel relaxed when they saw it moving without a leash. But nothing had happened in the years we had him. Nothing that gave any of us a specific reason to think a specific afternoon was going to be different. The family 2 doors down had a Pomeranian, young, barely past the puppy stage. The kind of small dog that children in a neighborhood form immediate and intense attachments to. Their kids were outside with it most afternoons that summer. I was inside, lunchtime, ordinary Tuesday. A show on in the background, nothing I was paying particular attention to. At 12:40, I heard the sound from outside. High-pitched, continuous, the kind of sound that registers in your body before your brain has classified it. Something immediately and viscerally wrong even before you know what you are hearing. My first thought was a bird, something small in the bushes. I almost went back to what I was doing. I went to the window instead. My father's dog was in the front yard. He had gotten through the gate, a latch failure I never got a clear explanation for, and he was in the front yard. The neighbor's Pomeranian was in the front yard. The neighbor's children were in the front yard. I went outside. By the time I reached the yard, it was over. There was nothing to stop. The sound I had heard from inside was the last sound the Pomeranian made, and I was standing in our front yard in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon looking at what my father's dog had done. The children who owned it were 10 feet away. My father came out about 45 seconds after I did. He saw the yard. He saw the neighbor's children. He saw what his dog had done in the middle of a residential street at lunchtime on a Tuesday. He went back inside. I am going to be specific about what I mean by that. He came through the front door. He stood on the porch. He looked at all of it. And then he turned around and went back through the door he had come out of. No words to the children. No acknowledgement of what was in front of him. He simply left. I was 13. I was the one who was still outside. The neighbor came out when she heard her children. I was the one standing there when she arrived and understood what had happened to her dog. I was the one present for that moment. I did not have anything adequate to say. I was 13 and there was nothing adequate to say, and the adult who was supposed to be handling this had already gone back inside. The dog stayed in that yard for 6 more years. I found out as an adult from my mother that the neighbor's family had tried to file a formal complaint with animal control. An officer came once. My father told him the gate had malfunctioned and it would not happen again. The officer accepted that explanation and left. No legal consequence, no forced rehoming, no documentation of what had happened that afternoon. Because my father never acknowledged it was his fault, nothing was ever formally on record. The complaint went nowhere. The dog stayed. I grew up in that house. I watched my father manage that dog for 6 more years in the same yard on the same street where those kids lived. He never once brought up that afternoon in any conversation, in any context, not once in 6 years, as if it had simply not happened. The neighbor's family moved away about 2 years after. I do not know if the kids ever got another dog. I never asked and nobody told me. I was the only one standing in that yard when the neighbor came outside. I was 13. I handled it as well as a 13-year-old can handle something like that. My father never came back out. Those 2 stories are about the moments nobody prepares you for and the people who should have done something and didn't. This last one is quieter than either of them. No one did anything wrong. But what she went through alone in the dark before she found me is something I am still not over. My dog has never once woken me up in the middle of the night. Not in 6 years. She sleeps at the foot of the bed and she stays there until I get up in the morning. That has been the pattern every single night since I got her. So when she started bumping her snout against me at 2 o'clock in the morning and would not stop, I knew something was wrong before I even turned on the light. What I found when I did is not something I will forget. And the part I think about most is not what I saw. It is how long she had been sitting there alone with it before she came to find me. Some context. She is a 6-year-old lab mix, the kind of dog that has 1 speed during the day and no speed at night. She eats at 5:30. She goes out twice in the evening. She is on the bed by 9, and she does not move until morning. That has been her schedule her entire adult life. I have never once in 6 years woken up to her doing anything other than sleeping. I live on a rural property with woods behind the house. She has a dog door and goes out on her own after the last evening walk, usually for 10 or 15 minutes, never longer. I do not typically monitor it because she has never given me any reason to. Same routine, every night, for 6 years. That night, I fell asleep around 10:30. The house was quiet. She was at the foot of the bed in her usual spot. At 2 o'clock in the morning, something touched my arm. Her snout pressed against my arm and then pulled back. Then again. I told her to settle. I was mostly asleep when I said it, reflex more than actual waking up. She did not settle. She did it again and again. Patient, deliberate, not frantic, just steady and continuous in a way she had never been before. I told her a second time to lie down. She bumped my arm again. I got up. I turned on the bedside lamp. She was standing right next to the bed, looking up at me. Her face was covered in quills, porcupine quills, embedded in the skin around her snout and muzzle, clustered at the soft tissue near her mouth and nose, some of them going straight in, some at angles. My brain went from half asleep to fully awake in approximately 2 seconds. I crouched down and looked at her. The quills on the outside were already significant, more than I could quickly count, packed into a concentrated area around her muzzle. But I was not most worried about the outside. I knew what it meant when a dog bit down on a porcupine. I opened her mouth. The inside was covered, soft tissue of the inner lips, the gums, the tongue, quills buried into the flesh at different depths, some shallow, some so deep that only the very end was visible above the surface. She had bitten down, and the quills had gone into every surface that contacted them. The inside of her mouth looked like something that should not be possible, and she was shaking. She had not made a single sound, not when it happened, not during the time between when it happened and when she came to wake me. Not when I opened her mouth and she must have felt every quill shift with the movement. Nothing. She had just kept bumping her snout against my arm in the dark, steady and patient, until I got up. I held her down with one arm and pulled the quills out one by one. There is no painless way to do that. Quills are barbed. Pulling them means pulling the barbs through the flesh. They do not ease out. They have to be drawn through, and there is no version of that process that does not hurt. I worked from the outside in, moving as quickly as I could without missing any, and finished with the deepest ones inside her mouth. She did not fight me. Her whole body was shaking throughout, and she did not fight me once. When the last one came out, I sat down on the floor next to her. She put her head in my lap. We sat there for a while with the light on before either of us moved. We were at the vet when they opened at 7 in the morning. She was checked thoroughly, cleared. No missed quills, no infection started. She was going to be fine. I sat in that waiting room feeling a specific kind of relief that is hard to put into words after a night like that. The vet asked me when I thought it had happened. I told him I wasn't sure. Sometime after 10:30 when I fell asleep, before 2 when she woke me up. He looked at the wounds, the depth of the deepest quills, the early stage inflammation already visible in the tissue. He told me based on what he was seeing, She had most likely been outside for 45 minutes minimum before she came to find me. 45 minutes, alone, in the dark, unable to open her mouth fully without making it worse, unable to bark, unable to cry out, unable to do any of the things a dog normally does when something is wrong. For 45 minutes, she sat with all of that, and then she found another way. She came to the foot of the bed in the dark, and she bumped her snout against my arm, and she did not stop until I got up. She is right here next to me as I am telling you this. She is fine, but I do not let her out at night without checking the yard first anymore. I will not make her sit alone with something like that again.